All right, I want to add something to our conversation around budgeting and planning and control. So I found this presentation, and I also posted a video that was done by this organization. It's called a 5-Step Guide to Budget Development, and it's a focus on nonprofit organizations. But I really think it applies to any organization. But since many of you will end up in nonprofit organizations, it might be particularly germane. So they talk about planning involving planning and control. We need to think about people, processes, and technology. And they lay out a 5-step process to develop a budget. The first is to assemble a budget team, and that's discussed in Chapter 9 as well. But there's some more details in here which I really like, which don't really get addressed in Chapter 9. So once I've assembled a budget team, I need to then create a budget calendar. So this will tell people what's expected and when it's expected. And then I want to put a process in place. So not only do I have to tell people what's expected and when it's expected, but I have to let them know where it's going to be reviewed, when the feedback's going to exist, and then how the whole process is going to play out and then ultimately be implemented. Then we build the budget, and then the fifth part is the control part, which is to monitor the budget. So when we talk about the budget team, many times the chief financial officer or the chief management accountant is at the center of it because he or she is going to drive the process. They're not responsible for the budget, but they are responsible oftentimes for putting the process in place. And so part of that is to involve all the key stakeholders. That may include the CEO, it may include the director of human resources, it may include the program managers, or if you're in a for-profit company, it might be the sales manager, marketing manager, and so forth. But basically, you want the key players from across the organization to be involved so they know what the expectations are, they know what the schedule is, and they give direction to their organizations. So then I'm going to put together a calendar, and the calendar is going to say, this is when we're going to start, and this is what we're going to end. And oftentimes, I'll have to start a budget process at least 3 months, sometimes longer, in advance of when I'm going to implement it. So if my implementation date is July 1st, then I may start the budget in March, or I may even start it earlier. But I need time to figure out what I want and communicate that to the various organizations, give them time to collect the information that they need to collect, submit their proposals, have a review of the proposals, give them feedback. Then oftentimes this is an iterative process. And so as part of the budget process, I want to set what the overall goals are. I can use a tops-down or a bottoms-up approach, but in either case, I need to have goals. And then once I have those goals in place, then I can gather the data, fill out the template, and forecast the current year's results. And then building the budget so I can start with expenses or with revenue. It was mentioned previously that we often start with revenue. We could start with expenses. At the end of the day, we're going to have to budget both revenue and expenses, income statement. We're going to have to budget for cash, and we're going to have to budget for the major capital items as well. And then once I've done that and it's got an internal review and adjustments, I then go to the board of directors for final approval. And so as part of these, I may have very detailed schedules around what I want to include. But typically, in terms of board approval, somebody submits the draft budget to the finance committee, and senior management and finance staff make revisions, and then once approved by the finance committee, submit to the full board, and then the full board approves, or in some cases may not approve, may ask for some adjustments, and then that's communicated back to the operating units. And then once that's done, then we have to, and the budget's in place, then I start to execute against the budget, and I want to start to compare how I'm doing monthly and quarterly against the expectations, against the budget. So I do a budget to actual for revenue and expenses, for headcount, and I provide key information to the senior management team, including the executive director, and in some cases on a quarterly basis to the board of directors, and that's at a much higher level of information. Okay, so a nice summary in terms of what goes on in terms of budget process, and thought it would be helpful to the conversation of this week.